Some of us work in organizations where we need to communicate with other team members. Maybe you have AEs that you partner with as a BDR. But let's say that you are a sales support agent and you work with AEs to help them maximize their accounts and to help them sell more. How do you communicate? You have to sell them to let you partner with their accounts before you can even make your first sale. And on this episode today, my friend Carlos is going to give you his playbook on what he does and how this can help you. You're going to love it. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, I'm bringing on a fantastic guest. His name is Mr. Carlos Oquendo Jr. Now, Carlos is working at a little startup you probably heard of. I mean, they were a startup like 30 years ago, Microsoft. And in this episode, Carlos is going to talk about how he works with his account executives as a sales support, how he's able to, because I mean, these AEs have the accounts. He needs to partner with these AEs to be able to make some more sales and help the sales reps to generate more revenue. He's doing a fantastic job. The concept that he has is not complicated. It's just that he has it and he utilizes it. Oftentimes we see that people in positions like Carlos don't necessarily have the capability to generate a lot of revenue because they don't have the relationship with the AEs. On this episode, Carlos is going to tell you what he did and what's making him so successful. Absolutely love the concept. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, please subscribe. Also, tell someone else about this podcast. And I'd love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly. Find all that information down there in the show notes. Let's go ahead and dive in, get a chance to connect with Carlos and learn his experience and his process.
Indeed. No, thank you, Donald. Appreciate that. So yes, I've been at Microsoft going on almost 6 years in my current role on what we call a Dynamics or business application specialist. And so essentially I work in the banking vertical with some of our largest banks in our country to work with them to help them solve whether it's operational problems, Salesforce problems, right, workflow issues, with whether it's our CRM tools or what we call our low-code platform. So definitely excited to be here at Microsoft, that's for sure. All of my sales roles have actually been from the perspective of the specialist, right? So obviously I know, right, we speak to a lot of these podcasts to account executives, right? The folks who own the customer relationship. But I've been in sales over 15 years and even a sales leader. And in all of my roles, I've been in the specialist role, essentially the internal partner role. So I have a specialty, but I'm not the AE, right? And so I'm not the tip of the spear for the customer. And so I learned pretty quickly in my first sales role that boy, oh boy, do I need to make friends with the folks that's interacting with the customers, right? Because I don't know what the exact statistics are, but I'm sure everybody will agree a warm lead, right, where there's a relationship with the customer there is a lot better than a cold lead, right? It's going to be a higher probability to close. So I figured that out pretty early on in my sales career back when I was working at B of A. And I realized that, boy, I need to really make friends with these internal partners. And obviously it goes deeper than that, right? But I really need to stay connected to them and understand their world, what their goals are, what their priorities are, so that they are willing to introduce me to their customers. So essentially I had to build that trust, right, with my internal partners so that they would be willing to introduce me to their contacts. I'll kind of take it back to the genesis, right, the beginning of it. So my first sales role was a field sales rep selling merchant services at B of A. So essentially what merchant services is you're selling credit card processing, point of sale systems to small business customers. Now, the way this works, back then you're assigned a territory of financial centers, right? And so you have one of two ways you can go about it. You can, in that territory, just go knock on doors to small business owners, right? And you could go ahead and say, hey, I want to sell you my solution, right? I want to try to switch you away from the competitor, or if it's a new business, I want you to use my services. The other way you could do this is to cultivate the relationship with those financial centers you're assigned to, so that as small business come into those financial centers, those folks are willing to refer them to you. So what I did when I first started, so you're talking, I had 35 to 40 financial centers, and in the first week I had like 4 leads, which that's horrible, by the way. And so I said, you know what? I'm new to this game, but I love working with people. So let me figure this out. So literally, what I did was, I went to the financial center in person, and I found the manager, right? And I said, hey, obviously I'm your new rep, introducing myself, and I started out opening up a can of worms, Donald. I literally said, hey, I'm new, but I see, right, that there's not a lot of leads coming. Is there, what are your expectations out of this partnership that maybe the previous person didn't deliver on? I'd love to kind of know what your expectations are of me so that I can deliver on it so we can have a fruitful partnership. And the first
Yeah.
thing she said to me, I'll never forget it. She said, "Well, first of all, I know what you look like because I don't even know what the last guy looked like." So that told me, yeah, number one, you need to be able to show up, right? And so starting the partnership, you need to be able to show up. And then number two, I mentioned it before, you've got to be able to build the trust. Well, how is trust built? When I ask them, hey, send me leads, right? I'm going to be able to take care of those customers. Number one, I had to follow through. So what that meant was when they sent me a lead, whether they called me or emailed me, I had to, number one, make sure I called the customer in a timely manner. Number two, I had to make sure that I also followed up with the folks that sent me the referral so they knew exactly what was going on with it so that they're not surprised when the customer comes back in there and lets them know of a status that they're like and they're in the dark, right? So I was able to do this, right, and take care of the customer, give them great service, right, set them up with a service, keep my word, be a man of integrity. And I was able to do this, Donald, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. I just kept showing up to different financial centers, right, and literally just letting them know, hey, here's who I am, right? Here, how do you want this partnership to work, right? Setting the boundaries, expectations, then following through on my end. And I'll tell you, I was very successful at it. I actually went to two platinum clubs. It also comes down to organization, right? So I was a pretty organized person is one of my strengths. So one thing I did was I kept track of the last time I was in each of those financial centers. So I know if it's been, maybe 2, 3 weeks, ooh, they haven't seen my face in a while. Let me make sure I go there. The other thing was is understanding, hey, what's in it for them, right? So they had metrics, right? Referral metrics, and then eventually, like when I closed deals, that helped their numbers, right? But they also don't want to jeopardize the overall customer relationship. And so one of the things I also realized, and this is true of honestly now Bank of America and Microsoft, even though you're an internal partner, you can't take for granted, right, that your partner completely understands your solution and knows what questions to ask the customer to tee up the referral. So I think the other thing I did was instill confidence in my partners by number one, really fulfilling my specialist role, knowing what I was talking about, but then also making sure that I arm them with education, enough education, so that they understand the solution and they understand, hey, what's one or two good questions to ask a customer so that I can tee them up and get them over to you. And so I think that was also instrumental in being successful in that space because sometimes, like I said, we take for granted, oh, we're all in the same company. Don't you know these products? And no, they have, these partners of yours have their own
Mm-hmm.
solutions they have to focus on. You need to take ownership of that yourself and then give them confidence by arming them with enough information for them to get you a referral. You've got to convince your account executives that you're somebody that's trustworthy before they're going to open up that Rolodex, right, and give you all their contacts. And it comes with when you get that initial opportunity, nail it, right? Now I'll give you a great example, great story. So here at Microsoft, in my previous role, I sold support services, right? And so essentially what that means is back then I was working with state and local government customers. And so these customers, right, buy Microsoft products, but then obviously they have to actually implement them. And that's where some of our support services come into play. Now I'm new to Microsoft, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when you get a shot and they allow you in front of a customer, you got to nail it, right? And so I went on site with the AE and several other Microsoft folks, got a chance to actually pitch these solutions in front of a customer. It went very well, connected well with the customer, and they ended up wanting to upgrade their solution. Now, without me having to do anything, just that one instance of me once again showing up, making sure I educate my internal partners, and then following through with the customer, it was like literally on the next call where there's, larger team of their peers, they praised me and said, if you don't have Carlos in front of your customers, you need to get him in front of your customers. And so, like, all of a sudden now, instead of me having to do all the heavy lifting of, kind of building that trust and promoting myself, now I get trust by association, right? Because now this account executive has said, no, this guy's good. I saw him in front of a customer. He followed through with what he said to the customer. The delivery's great, right? The customer's happy. You need to get this guy in front of your customer. So it was awesome, man. And so that's how I've just continued to be able to be successful in these roles where once again I'm not the tip of the spear, but I'm very respectful, right? That the AE owns these relationships, and so I'm always one to gain their trust first and realize and respect their place.
Why should I even do that?
Yeah, great question. So, in our space and typically in spaces where you're a specialist, the AEs typically have multiple buckets, right? And that's the thing. AEs are pulled in a lot of directions. But typically they're going to have multiple buckets that they are trying to fill, right, to get to their quota. So, a couple of things is in it for the AEs. Obviously, when we think about, right, we're not independently wealthy, so we got to talk quotas and sales, right? So, typically there's going to be a bucket, right, that needs to be filled so that AE can make money. So one of the first things that's in it for them is if you can, right, build the trust with the AE and then obviously get in front of the customer and land these solutions. One of the things that's in it for them is, right, you're going to help them make money. You're going to help fill one of their quota buckets. Right now, once again, they don't want to jeopardize that though. If you can, if you're going to jeopardize the relationship, because then that could bleed into, right, detracting from the other buckets, right, the other solutions that they've bought from
The other
Microsoft.
bucket.
Yeah, so the definitely in it for them is number one, fulfilling quota, and then on top of that is being able to then deepen that partnership with the customer, which is going to help make them look good because the AE is saying, hey, I'm bringing in this guy, I'm bringing a solution to solve a problem for you. And when they do that, all they've done is enhance their trust with the customer. Now, right, the next time that AE goes to recommend something to that client, right, there's more and more trust, right, capital built with that client. Potentially cost could be a thing, right? Like they also want to make sure the customer is
Mhm.
getting good value, because if they're a trusted advisor to the customer, is the cost that we are proposing for the solution, is the customer going to get an ROI, right? And so we have mechanisms where we get into business value. And so sometimes, once again, you've got to ensure the AE understands the business value of that solution so that they can be supportive of it, right? So sometimes it could be business value, and sometimes it's literally just, hey, I don't know if this message is going to land well with the customer. Let's make sure, right, we're considering sometimes the customer's internal politics and how we present this, who we present it to, and the words that we choose. And so sometimes, and that's sometimes just really part of partnering together in the AE understanding in more depth the issues, or the political scene that's going on in the customer. And so that's where, if anything, you want to, you're grateful that the AE is willing to point those out so you can avoid any landmines. Number one is want to be connected to those AEs on a regular basis, right? All the AEs I work with, we talk every single week, a lot of times multiple times a week, and that's definitely where you want to be, where you're constantly having that dialogue, right, to ensure that you're on the same page. But I think it also comes when you're new in the space. Is, don't shy away from what you don't know, right? I think a lot of people, like for example, at Microsoft, we can use the new card for up to a year, right? So, there's that old saying, fake it till you make it. Don't do that, right? Don't fake it, right? Be genuine, be real. I think AEs really, really respect that, right? They're going to respect, right? And as long as you continue to be a student of your craft and, seek to be a person of excellence, they'll see that you're continuing to grow in your knowledge of your solution, and they'll respect you all that much more. And so I think it's part of it's being genuine, keep staying close to the AE, to have constant communication, but then also making sure that you constantly stay a student of your craft and growing in your understanding of the solution and in sales strategy. I mean, I think step one is, if you're in a role, like the ones I've held, where you're the specialist, right? And there's, whether it's a financial center or in my case now, you have an AE who owns the relationship. I mean, I think step one is, as much as you can, right? Study your craft, your specialty, because obviously they're making you a specialist so that you can own that part. So as much as you can, own that part, right? Skill up as much as you can, as fast as you can, because ultimately, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is show the AEs that you're going to bring value to those customers, and that's what they want to see. And so I think you start there, and then obviously build the relationships, right? Build the relationships with the AE so that they can see, right, the way you operate, what kind of person you are. I've always prided myself in that ability to connect with folks, right? That's why I'm in sales, because I'm just naturally a very curious person. I love connecting with people. and I connect on a human level first. So I meet my AEs. I don't talk anything about business. I want to get to know them and what makes them tick. And like you see behind me, right? I've got family on the wall, right? This is my reminder. This is my first
Yeah.
why, right? Of why I do what I do. So I want to understand what is the why for the AE, right? So I connect first on a human level, and then obviously we have those. You want to set up that cadence so you can definitely formulate the business strategy as well. But yeah, you can hit me up on LinkedIn, right? I'm wide open on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place to connect with me. I'm on there pretty frequently, so feel free to hit me up anytime. Always glad to share what I've learned in my journey.
Hey, that was Carlos Oquendo Jr. If you haven't connected with Carlos on LinkedIn yet, go ahead and connect with him. I got his stuff right here. Please, you're going to love it. Big shout out to Dewan for connecting us. I appreciate that. Again, if this is your first time listening to this podcast, we are doing several things. Two things. One, we want to help you to 3 to 5x your sales pipeline. Two, we want to help you to close twice as many deals. And all of our episodes are going to do that. As always, I want you to raise your level of thinking. Connect with our sponsors. They have some amazing offers, and take advantage of our LinkedIn prospecting course. It's going to help you to not only build more pipeline, I guarantee it's going to help you close more deals. I want you to 3 to 5x your sales pipeline. I want you to close twice as many deals, but I want you to go out and do big things. Thanks so much for watching.